The last Velothi fortress world was dying. Massive explosions lit up the dark sky as enemy ships rained down deadly plasma beams from space. The once beautiful cities were now burning ruins, and thick black smoke covered everything like a blanket of death. Ambassador Yuna stood at the window of the emergency command center, watching the horror unfold below. Evacuation ships were lifting off desperately, packed with terrified families trying to escape. Children pressed their faces against the windows, looking back at the only home they had ever known. Many wouldn't make it out in time. This was the 17th world the Chromac Empire had destroyed in just 3 months. Their war machines were unstoppable. Every time the Velothi coalition tried to fight back, the Chromacs crushed them easily. Their technology was too advanced, their weapons too powerful, their tactics too brutal. Yuna's hands shook as she remembered the reports from other fallen worlds. The Chromacs didn't just conquer planets, they enslaved entire populations or wiped them out completely. They showed no mercy to anyone, not even children or the elderly. Billions of innocent beings had already died, and billions more would follow unless something changed. But what could change? The coalition had tried everything. They had called for help from other civilized species across the galaxy, but everyone was too afraid to face the Chromac war machine. The few allies they had were either too weak or too far away to help in time. Walking down the corridor toward the communications chamber, Yuna felt the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders. The walls shook with each enemy blast, and dust fell from the ceiling. Emergency lights flickered red, casting scary shadows everywhere. She could hear the distant sounds of panic, people running, sirens wailing, and the thunder of explosions getting closer. Inside the communications room, the technicians looked at her with desperate hope. They had tried every normal channel, contacted every known friendly species, but no one was coming to help. The galaxy had written off the Velothi as another casualty of Chromac expansion, but Yuna remembered something from the old archives. There were other worlds out there, dangerous worlds that civilized species avoided. They called them Deathworlds, places so harsh and violent that they bred savage creatures. The galactic community feared these worlds and their inhabitants, considering them too primitive and brutal to associate with. Her trembling fingers moved toward the deep space transmitter controls. Broadcasting on Deathworld frequencies was strictly forbidden. The Galactic Council had banned all contact with these savage species centuries ago, afraid of what might happen if they got involved in civilized affairs. But as another massive explosion shook the building and she heard the screams of her people dying outside, Yuna realized they had no choice left. Civilized help wasn't coming. Maybe it was time to call on the uncivilized. She activated the transmitter and opened channels to every frequency she could find, including the forbidden ones that reached toward the unknown Deathworlds lurking in the galaxy's dangerous corners. To any who received this message, she spoke into the void, her voice breaking with emotion. The Chromac Empire threatens all free peoples. We need help. Captain Minho was reviewing patrol reports in his quarters when the communication alert sounded. The bridge of the Iron Resolve had been quiet for weeks, cruising through the empty sectors of human space. Earth's mighty battleship was built for war, but lately there hadn't been much fighting to do. Captain, to the bridge, came the urgent call from Lieutenant Deho. We're receiving an unknown transmission. It's not from any human colony. Minho rushed to the command center, his boots echoing through the metal corridors. The Iron Resolve was one of humanity's most powerful warships, equipped with enough firepower to level a small moon. But for the past 50 years, ships like this had been limited to patrolling human territory and nothing more. On the bridge, the crew stood around the communications console with confused expressions. Ensign Minji looked up as the captain arrived. Sir, this signal is coming from outside known space. The language is completely alien, but our computers managed to translate most of it. Minho listened to the message, and his heart sank. The voice belonged to someone called Ambassador Yun, and she was begging for help. Her people were being destroyed by something called the Chromac Empire. 17 worlds had already fallen, and millions were dying. "Play it again," Minho ordered, studying the tactical display that showed the signal's origin point. It was coming from a region of space that humanity had never explored, far beyond their borders. The desperation in the alien woman's voice was unmistakable. Minho had heard that same tone before, during the colony wars, when human settlements were under attack. It was the sound of someone watching their entire world burn, while feeling completely helpless to stop it. "Sir," said his communications officer quietly, "according to first contact protocols, we're supposed to ignore this completely. Earth Command has strict orders about getting involved in alien conflicts. We're not supposed to make contact with any non-human species." Minho knew the rules better than anyone. After humanity had finally achieved faster-than-light travel and discovered they weren't alone in the universe. Their first attempts at joining the galactic community had gone terribly wrong. Other species looked at Earth's violent history, harsh environment, and aggressive nature with fear and disgust. They labeled humans as dangerous Deathworlders and banned them from galactic civilization. For decades, humanity had remained isolated, forbidden from participating in the wider universe. The galactic community wanted nothing to do with the savage species from the deadly planet Earth. Human ships were shot on sight if they entered civilized space, and no alien species would trade or communicate with them. But listening to Ambassador Yuno's plea, Minho felt something stirring in his chest. This wasn't about politics or first contact protocols. This was about innocent people dying while their neighbors turned away and did nothing. He opened a direct channel to Admiral J at Terra Command on Earth. The transmission would take several minutes to reach home, but this decision was too important to make alone. "Admiral," he said into the communication array, "we've received a distress call from an alien species under attack. They're asking for help, and I think we should answer." The message from Admiral Jisoo spread across human space like wildfire, from the outer mining colonies to the industrial shipyards near Earth. The same order echoed through every military base. All available warships report for immediate deployment. This is not a drill. Captain Hin was inspecting repairs on his cruiser Daegu Hammer when the call came through. His ship had just returned from a patrol mission along the frontier, where pirates sometimes attacked human supply convoys. The cruiser's hull still showed fresh battle scars from their last encounter, but the engines were running strong and the weapon systems were fully operational. "How long until we can launch?" Hyun asked his chief engineer, Seojin, who was covered in grease from working on the main reactors. "Give me 6 hours to finish the repairs, Captain. The plasma conduits took some damage, but nothing we can't fix." Quickly, all around them, the massive orbital shipyard buzzed with urgent activity. The dreadnought Soul's Fury was loading ammunition and supplies at the main docking platform. This enormous warship was humanity's pride, built during the darkest days of the colony wars, when entire human settlements were being wiped out by rival factions. Its thick armor plating and massive railguns had turned the tide of many desperate battles. At another dock, the destroyers Bison Strike and Incheon Guard were taking on crews and provisions. These ships were smaller, but incredibly fast, designed to hunt down enemy vessels and strike before disappearing back into space. Their captains, Ji-hoon and Sumin, had both served with distinction during the frontier conflicts. The most impressive sight was the carrier Jeju Storm, slowly moving away from the station with its belly full of atmospheric fighters. These small, agile ships were built to operate both in space and within planetary atmospheres. Their pilots were some of humanity's best, trained to fight in any environment from the vacuum of space to the thick air of hostile worlds. Captain Hyun watched as more ships arrived every hour. Heavy cruisers from the defense fleets, assault ships from the Marine Corps, support vessels carrying medical supplies and repair equipment. Each warship told a story of humanity's violent past through the scars on their hulls and the experience of their crews. The frigate Olsen Runner limped in with blast damage along its port side from a recent skirmish with smugglers. The assault ship Gwangju Fist arrived with its marine complement, fresh from training exercises on a high-gravity world. Every vessel in the growing fleet had seen real combat, and their crews knew exactly what war looked like. Deep in space, hidden alien monitoring stations watched this unprecedented gathering with growing fear. Their automated sensors detected massive energy signatures as human ships activated their weapons systems and began forming battle formations. No species from the dangerous Deathworlds had ever assembled such a powerful fleet before. The aliens had always assumed that Deathworld species were too savage and primitive to organize on such a scale, but the readings didn't lie. Over 200 human warships were gathering in formation, their combined firepower enough to devastate entire star systems. The humans were coming to war, and the galaxy was about to discover what happened when you cornered the apex predators from Earth. The space around Valathi territory looked like a nightmare. Burning debris from destroyed ships floated everywhere, glowing red against the darkness of space. Thousands of small evacuation vessels fled desperately from the inner systems, packed with terrified families who had lost everything. Admiral Jisoo stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the chaos through the main viewing screen. The human fleet had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Valathi space, and the sight before them was heartbreaking. Entire families were crammed into cargo ships, never meant to carry passengers, while medical vessels overflowed with wounded civilians. Admiral called Lieutenant Soman from the communications station. I'm picking up a signal from one of the larger refugee vessels. Someone is trying to contact us directly. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at their first living alien. Ambassador Yuna appeared on screen, her large eyes filled with tears of relief. Her species looked somewhat like humans but with pale blue skin and elongated features. She was clearly exhausted, probably hadn't slept in days. You. You actually came, Yuna whispered through the translation system, her voice breaking with emotion. When I sent that message, I never thought anyone would answer, especially not from the Deathworlds. Admiral Jisoo stepped forward, her uniform crisp, despite the long journey. Ambassador Yuna, I'm Admiral Jisoo of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress call and came as quickly as possible. What's the current situation? Yuna's expression shifted from relief to confusion as she studied the human ships visible through her viewports. Your vessels, they're so different from anything we've seen before. Even the Chromax ships don't look like yours. Lieutenant Soman pulled up tactical displays showing both fleets. The difference was striking and immediate. Valathi's ships were elegant, smooth curves of gleaming metal with obvious energy weapon ports and shield generators. They looked like works of art, built by a species that valued beauty, even in their military vessels. Human ships, by contrast, looked like floating fortresses designed for brutal warfare. The Soul's Fury bristled with massive railgun turrets and missile pods. Its hull was covered in thick armor plating that showed scars from countless battles. Launch bays for boarding pods were clearly visible along the sides, designed to deliver Marines directly into enemy ships. Your weapons, Yuna said, studying the tactical readouts her ship's computers were providing. They're all physical projectiles, kinetic weapons. We've never seen military doctrine like this before. Captain Minho joined the conversation from his nearby cruiser. Ambassador, how do your people typically conduct space battles? We use energy weapons at long range, Yuna explained, still staring at the human ships with fascination and growing hope. Plasma cannons, particle beams, things like that. Combat usually happens at distances of several thousand kilometers. Clean, precise exchanges of fire until one side's shields fail. Admiral Jisoo exchanged glances with her officers. Human space combat was nothing like that. They preferred to get close, ram enemy ships if necessary, and send boarding parties to capture vessels intact. Their weapons were designed to punch through armor and cause massive internal damage. Admiral Yuna continued, her voice growing stronger. The Chromac Empire has destroyed 17 of our worlds. Their technology is far advanced, their shields nearly impenetrable to our weapons. But looking at your ships, I think you fight very differently than we do. The human fleet hung in space, like a pack of metal predators, ready to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens the innocent. Deep within Chromac territory, Admiral Vex sat in his luxurious command chamber, aboard the massive flagship Eternal Dominion. The ship was a masterpiece of advanced technology, its crystalline hull gleaming with integrated energy shields and plasma weapon arrays. Everything about it screamed superiority and technological advancement. Vex himself was an imposing figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with metallic scales that reflected the soft blue light of his ship's controls. His species had conquered dozens of civilizations over the past century, always through overwhelming technological superiority. They never needed to get their hands dirty with primitive tactics. Admiral, his intelligence officer reported, approaching with obvious nervousness. Our long-range sensors have detected unknown vessels at the edge of Velothi space. The energy signatures are ... unusual. Vex barely looked up from the tactical display, showing his forces systematically destroying another Velothi colony. Unusual how? Has another civilized species finally decided to interfere with our expansion? Sir, the ships appeared to be from a Deathworld. Our databases classify them as human vessels from the planet Earth, but there are over 200 of them, which seems impossible for such a primitive species. This got Vex's attention. He turned away from watching the bombardment and studied the sensor data with growing amusement. The human ships looked like floating scrap heaps compared to his sleek vessels. Their hulls were thick metal instead of elegant energy-absorbing materials. Their weapons appeared to be crude kinetic projectiles, rather than sophisticated plasma arrays. Humans. Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. The savage Deathworlders who were banned from civilized space decades ago. This is what the Velothi have called to save them? His tactical officer pulled up intelligence files on human capabilities. Sir, our records show they're extremely primitive. They still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles for weapons. Their ships are built like ancient atmospheric aircraft, with no understanding of proper energy shielding or plasma dynamics. Vex studied the data with growing confidence. Human technology was at least 2 centuries behind Chromac capabilities. Their ships were slow, bulky, and armed with weapons that would barely scratch Chromac energy shields. It would be like adults fighting children. Deploy the 3rd Fleet, Vex commanded, settling back in his command throne. We'll deal with these Deathworld savages quickly, then finish exterminating the Velothi. I want this over before the Galactic Council even realizes what happened. Unknown to the Chromacs, Captain Jiho watched everything from the shadows. His stealth ship Ghost of Jeju hung invisible in space, its advanced human cloaking technology keeping it hidden from Chromac sensors. The ship was small, built specifically for reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Jiho's crew worked quietly at their stations, recording every Chromac transmission and analyzing their fleet movements. The enemy was deploying in standard formation, energy ships maintaining long-range positions, confident their shields would protect them from any return fire. Captain, whispered his communications officer, the Chromacs are discussing human capabilities on open channels. They think we're primitives with no real military technology. Jiho smiled grimly as he watched the Chromac 3rd Fleet begin moving toward human positions. The enemy vessels were beautiful, gleaming with advanced technology and sophisticated weapon systems. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never faced real resistance. Transmit all tactical data to Admiral Jisoo, Jiho ordered. Include their formation patterns, shield frequencies, and weapons capabilities. And make sure she knows they're expecting an easy victory against what they consider inferior beings. The Chromax had no idea. They were about to face the apex predators from humanity's violent homeworld. The battle began at Kepler's Gate, a crucial hyperspace junction that connected dozens of star systems. Whoever controlled this point could cut off entire regions of space from reinforcements and supplies. It was the perfect place for the Chromax to make their stand against what they considered primitive human savages. Admiral Jisoo watched from her flagship as the enemy fleet approached, in perfect formation. The Chromax ships moved like a deadly ballet, their crystalline hulls gleaming as energy shields shimmered around them. They maintained precise distances from each other, creating overlapping fields of plasma cannon fire that could destroy anything caught between them. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "enemy vessels are charging weapons. They're maintaining range at 50,000 kilometers, standard galactic combat distance." The first Chromac plasma barrage lit up space like artificial lightning. Massive beams of superheated energy lanced across the void, striking human ships with devastating precision. The cruiser, Daegu Hammer, took a direct hit to its port side, armor plating melting under the intense heat. 3 destroyers were forced to retreat as their hulls began glowing. Red-hot arkinetic weapons can't penetrate their shields at this range, Captain Heian reported, his voice tight with frustration. The railgun rounds are being deflected or absorbed completely. This was exactly what Admiral Jisoo had expected. She had spent weeks studying every available recording of galactic warfare, analyzing how civilized species fought their battles. They preferred clean, long-range exchanges of energy fire, with victory going to whoever had better shields and more powerful weapons. But humans didn't fight like civilized species. "All ships, execute ramming protocol," Jisoo ordered calmly. "Target their shield generators directly. Get us close enough to hurt them." Captain Wansik commanded the destroyer Pohang Runner, one of humanity's fastest and most maneuverable ships. When the ramming order came through, his crew didn't hesitate for a second. They had trained for this exact scenario countless times. "Full power to engines," Wansik commanded. "All hands brace for impact." The Pohang Runner accelerated directly toward a massive Chromac cruiser, its engines screaming as it built up tremendous speed. Chromac plasma cannons focused their fire on the approaching destroyer, but human ships were built to take punishment. The vessel's thick armor absorbed hit after hit as it closed the distance. The Chromacs couldn't understand what they were seeing. No civilized species would sacrifice a ship in such a primitive, brutal manner. Their tactical computers had no response. Programmed for such savage behavior, the Pohang Runner slammed into the Chromac cruiser's shield generator array like a meteor strike. The impact was tremendous, sending shockwaves through both vessels. The destroyer's reinforced bow crumpled, but it had done its job. The enemy's shields flickered and died. "Shields down on Target 7, reported the tactical officer. "All ships, focus fire." Human kinetic weapons found their mark immediately. Railgun rounds designed to punch through asteroid belts tore into the Chromac ship's elegant hull. Nuclear torpedoes, banned by most civilized species as too destructive, exploded against the vessel's exposed armor. But the real shock came next. As the crippled Chromac cruiser tried to retreat, human boarding pods launched from nearby assault ships. Captain Nari led the first wave, her marines equipped with projectile weapons and explosive charges. The Chromacs had never faced boarding actions before. Their species fought clean, technological battles from the safety of their bridge computers. When human marines stormed through their corridors, the aliens panicked completely. Human weapons tore through alien defenders who had no experience with close combat. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world. The battle had turned into complete chaos. And that's when humans truly began to shine. While the Chromac crews panicked as their perfect formations fell apart, human forces adapted and struck with deadly precision. The aliens had spent centuries fighting clean, predictable battles, but they had never faced an enemy that thrived in disorder and destruction. Aboard the Chromac cruiser Stellar Pride, emergency alarms blared as human boarding pods crashed through the hull like metallic meteors. The impact created massive holes that vented atmosphere into space, filling the corridors with swirling debris and toxic gases from damaged systems. Emergency lights flickered red, and the artificial gravity failed in several sections. For the Chromac crew, this was a nightmare scenario. Their species had evolved on a peaceful world with stable conditions. They wore environmental suits, even in their own ships, and needed controlled atmospheres to function properly. When their life support systems failed, most of them could barely move, let alone fight. But for Sergeant Kang and his Marine squad, this was just another day at the office. They had trained in the toxic swamps of Earth's Amazon, where the air itself could kill you. They had practiced combat in the crushing gravity of Jupiter's moons and learned to fight in the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, where one mistake meant death. Breathable atmosphere at 60% and dropping, Kang reported through his helmet, "Come. Gravity is fluctuating, and I'm reading chemical leaks in sections 4 through 7. Copy that, Sergeant," came Captain Nara's voice. "How's your squad handling it?" Kong smiled grimly as he watched his Marines move through the damaged ship like they owned it. Private Young Ho was climbing through a collapsed ventilation shaft with his assault rifle ready. Corporal Heron had sealed her suit against the toxic gases and was methodically clearing rooms that the aliens had abandoned. They moved with confidence, through conditions that would paralyze most civilized species. "We're doing fine, Captain. Better than fine, actually. The enemy can't handle these conditions at all." The Chromac defenders they encountered were helpless. These aliens had never fought in damaged ships or toxic environments. When their life support failed, they couldn't function. When gravity fluctuated, they became disoriented and confused. The human Marines, trained on a world where everything tried to kill them, adapted instantly to each new challenge. Kong's squad reached the command deck to find it abandoned, except for a few Chromac officers huddled around emergency breathing equipment. The aliens surrendered immediately, terrified of these Deathworld creatures who could fight in conditions that would kill them. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Minho was demonstrating another human advantage that the Chromacs couldn't understand. His cruiser Daegu Hammer had taken severe damage from plasma cannon hits. But instead of retreating or trying to maintain formation like a civilized ship would do, Minho did something completely unexpected. He ordered his ship to break away from the main battle and circle around behind the enemy fleet. Then he signaled to other damaged human vessels to follow him, to the Chromacs. This looked like a retreat, but they didn't understand human pack hunting tactics. Like wolves separating a wounded animal from the herd, the three human ships isolated a lone Chromac destroyer that had moved too far from its support vessels. They attacked from 3 different angles simultaneously, their damaged hulls and irregular movements making it impossible for the enemy to predict their actions. The Chromac ship, designed for orderly long-range combat, couldn't handle this chaotic multi-directional assault. Within minutes, it was crippled and boarded by human Marines who turned its own weapons against the remaining enemy fleet. Admiral Vex gripped the arms of his command throne as another massive explosion rocked his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Once the pride of the Chromac fleet, was now a burning wreck barely holding together. Through the smoke-filled bridge, he watched his tactical displays show the complete collapse of his forces. This was impossible. His intelligence reports had assured him that humans were primitive savages with crude technology. They were supposed to flee at the first sight of Chromac superiority. Instead, they had torn through his advanced fleet like wild animals, using tactics no civilized species would ever consider. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, his voice shaking with terror. "We've lost contact with the cruiser's infinite glory and stellar dominance. The destroyer Cosmic Spear is reporting total system failure. The humans are? They're boarding everything they can reach." Vex watched in horror as human ships moved through the battle like predators hunting prey. They didn't maintain proper formations or follow standard combat protocols. Instead, they scattered and regrouped unpredictably, striking from unexpected angles with weapons that punched through supposedly impenetrable defenses. The worst part was the boarding actions. No civilized species had used such primitive, brutal tactics in centuries. Watching human marines storm through Chromax ships was like witnessing demons from an ancient nightmare. They fought in conditions that would kill most aliens, showing no fear of death or injury. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the Third Fleet has lost 60% of its vessels. The Fourth Fleet is requesting permission to withdraw. Our casualties are ... double quotes." He paused, unable to believe the numbers. "Catastrophic." Another torpedo struck the flagship's hull, and Vex felt the deck plates buckle beneath his feet. Emergency systems failed one by one as human weapons continued their relentless assault. The ship's beautiful crystalline structure was cracked, and bleeding atmosphere into space. Vex had conquered 17 civilizations, but he had never faced anything like this. These humans didn't just fight to win. They fought like their very survival depended on victory. Every tactic they used was designed to cause maximum damage with complete disregard for their own safety. "All units," Vex transmitted across all Chromac frequencies, his voice filled with defeat. "Withdraw immediately. Fall back to the nexus point and establish defensive positions. This engagement is over." It was the first time in Chromac history that their forces had been forced to retreat. Across their empire, the news spread like wildfire. The Deathworlders had not only fought back, they had won decisively against superior technology and numbers. Emergency broadcasts went out to every Chromac colony and military base. Warning: human forces possess capabilities far beyond intelligence estimates. These Deathworld creatures fight without fear or mercy. They use primitive but devastatingly effective tactics. Avoid engagement at all costs until new countermeasures can be developed. But something else was happening that the fleeing Chromax didn't see. As the battle ended and human ships secured the area, medical vessels approached the disabled Chromax ships. Valathi refugee vessels, still fleeing the war zone, watched in amazement as human medics began treating wounded enemy soldiers. Dr. Sunhee led a medical team aboard a crippled Chromac destroyer, where they found dozens of injured aliens huddled in damaged compartments. Instead of executing prisoners as the Chromax would have done, the humans immediately began providing medical care. "Get me trauma kits over here," she called to her assistants. "This one has severe plasma burns, and that one needs emergency surgery." "Ambassador?" Yuna watched from her refugee ship as human medics shared their water supplies with Chromac prisoners and set up temporary medical stations to treat enemy wounded. These same humans who had fought like savage beasts were now showing mercy to their defeated enemies. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence, it was their ability to remain humane even in the midst of war. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so packed. Representatives from over 1,000 different species filled the massive chamber, their conversations creating a buzz that echoed off the crystalline walls. This was the most important session in galactic history, and everyone knew it. "Ambassador." Yuna walked slowly toward the central speaking platform, her blue skin pale with nervousness. For decades, her people had been respected members of this council, known for their diplomatic skills and peaceful nature. But today, she was about to challenge everything the galaxy believed about civilization and savagery. Behind her, in the observation galleries, hundreds of Valathi survivors watched with hope in their eyes. These were the people who had lived through the Chromac attacks, who had seen their worlds burn and their families scattered across space. They knew the truth about what had happened at Kepler's Gate. Honored delegates, Una began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. 3 months ago, my people faced extinction. The Chromac Empire had destroyed 17 of our worlds, and no civilized species would help us. We were abandoned to die. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many of the delegates looked uncomfortable, knowing their own governments had refused Velothi pleas for assistance. It was easier to let the Chromacs expand than risk their own forces in a hopeless war. In our desperation, Una continued, we did something forbidden. We broadcast a distress call to the Deathworlds, including Earth. We expected nothing, because everyone knows that Deathworlders are savage, primitive, and too dangerous to involve in civilized affairs. She paused, looking around the chamber, at faces from dozens of different species. But the humans came. Not just a few ships offering token assistance, but an entire fleet willing to risk everything for people they had never met. The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone had heard rumors about the Battle of Kepler's Gate, but the official reports had been classified. Now they were about to hear the truth from someone who had witnessed it firsthand. The humans didn't fight like us, Una said, her voice growing stronger. They used tactics we considered primitive and brutal. They rammed our enemy's ships, boarded them in combat, and showed no fear of death. But when the battle was over and the Chromacs fled in defeat, these same savage humans did something that proved their true nature. She activated a holographic display showing footage from the aftermath of the battle. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human medics treated wounded Chromac prisoners, sharing medical supplies and water with their defeated enemies. They saved the lives of aliens who had tried to kill them, Una said, her voice filled with emotion. The humans didn't just defeat our enemies, they showed us what true civilization really means. They fight not for conquest or glory, but to protect innocent lives. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates argued among themselves. Some species had always feared human aggression, while others were beginning to see them in a new light. The debate continued for hours, with testimony from other witnesses and analysis of battle recordings. Finally, Admiral Jisoo was invited to address the council. She walked to the podium with quiet dignity, wearing the simple uniform of the human defense fleet. For the first time in galactic history, a human was speaking before the assembled representatives of civilized space. Honorable delegates, she began, for 50 years, humanity has lived in isolation because you feared what we might do today. I hope you've seen what we actually choose to do when innocent lives are at stake.